Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cracking open a case file that really proves one thing, maybe a fundamental truth. Even in the afterlife, the biggest headache isn't necessarily, eternal damnation. It's staff turnover.
Right. And mandatory training, endless meetings, just bad project management, basically.
Exactly.
We are diving deep into a world where, believe it or not, the cosmic order seems to hinge on quarterly reports and a really complex, probably very inconvenient organizational chart.
Yeah.
This is basically an operational review of the Department of Hauntings and Spirits, the DH&S for short.
And our mission today, what we're trying to unpack, is this really fascinating and, frankly, profoundly problematic assignment. It involves one specific entity, the Ghost of Christmas Past, known in files only as Nolan.
And Nolan was given what sounds like a pretty standard task, on the surface anyway.
Right.
His job was to reclaim a mortal woman named Harriet York. She runs an antique shop down in Annapolis. Simple enough, right?
You'd think so. But that's where things get messy.
Oh, completely. We're going to trace the exact sequence of events where this supposedly perfect, regulated ancient system just slams headfirst into total organizational panic.
Because Nolan's assignment, it didn't just bend the rules.
No way. It didn't just veer off protocol. It completely shredded it, exploded it, really.
So this deep dive, it's your shortcut, your look inside the rules that supposedly govern life and death.
And crucially, what happens when those very rigid rules discover they are utterly, completely incompatible with something as messy as, well, human emotion?
Okay, let's unpack this. We really have to start with the organization itself, don't we? The DH&S, because it feels like the anchor for this whole bizarre ecosystem.
Absolutely. They manage the dead, but it sounds less like divine judgment and more like middle management trying to keep a failing branch office afloat.
Right. And their physical presence in the mortal world is just hilariously mundane.
It really is. The DH&S operates out of an actual physical location, but it's super subtle. Just an empty storefront, kind of tucked away between an ice cream parlor and a maritime shop in Annapolis.
The kind of place you'd walk past a dozen times.
Exactly.
Huh?
You wouldn't even notice it exists unless you were looking for it. Or unless you knew the secret knock.
Okay, the location sounds boring, but the access, it says something else.
Definitely not standard entry. You need to perform a very specific, kind of vague knock. It has to be to the tune of jingle bells.
Jingle bells? Seriously?
Yep. And the history of their physical locations. That alone tells you volumes about the chaos they're constantly dealing with. Organizational chaos seems to be the norm.
I heard they had to move before.
Oh, yeah. The sources confirm multiple moves. The most, let's say, infamous relocation happened because their previous HQ was accessed. Wait for it.
Go on.
Through the towel section of a Bed Bath & Beyond.
Hold on. Stop right there. The towel section. How does that even work?
Apparently, it worked until it didn't. That location got compromised, according to the official incident report, due to, and I quote, an incident involving a poltergeist and a cheeseburger-shaped beanbag chair.
A cheeseburger?
Yeah.
Beanbag chair. I have no words.
Right. The level of risk assessment needed to manage these entities must be astronomical. And yet they're constantly being undermined by, cheap retail items and apparently very enthusiastic cheese-themed spirits.
That one anecdote, though, it says everything about the operational risks they juggle every single day. This is the bureaucracy that's trying to contain actual, untamed chaos.
And they try to do it with structure. A really rigid internal structure.
It's like corporate culture gone completely supernatural.
Totally. The DH&S has these designated separate departments. You've got phantoms over here, ghouls over there.
Malevolent spirits. Sounds fun.
Right. And of course, the holiday spirits department. That's where our ghost, Nolan, works.
And they have actual corporate stuff, like meetings.
Mandatory staff meetings, yep. Quarterly reports. They even have a benefit center and an annual summer picnic. Attendance compulsory for all.
I cannot get past the idea of a ghost benefit center. I mean, if you're already dead, what benefit are you possibly aiming for? Dental? Do ghouls need, life insurance?
Nah.
Is that a thing?
Huh. Well, the implication seems to be that these benefits are less about, health coverage and maybe more about managing eternal stagnation.
Ah, okay. Like preventing cosmic burnout.
Exactly. Imagine mandatory wellness seminars focus entirely on avoiding eternal boredom. That's probably the biggest risk for a centuries-old ghost, right? Just burnout. So the system puts in these corporate requirements, maybe just to force engagement.
Keep them busy.
Keep them busy. The receptionist, Betty, she's usually the one managing the front desk chaos. Apparently, she's often seen eating these enormous jelly tarts. Maybe even the staff are just trying to, stimulate their muted senses somehow.
Anything for a jolt. And their supervisor, Isabella, the one Nolan reports to. She sounds like the perfect embodiment of this cold bureaucracy.
Oh, yeah. Described with sharp cheekbones, apparently manages to give off this vibe of extreme intimidation, even while wearing a blinking reindeer headband.
Perfect. So she could probably work in the malevolent spirits department easily.
You'd think. But she chooses holiday spirits. Maybe she enjoys managing the very specific, regulated kind of misery that seems inherent in that section. Who knows?
She sounds like the kind of manager who lives for deadlines.
It definitely provides the steel spine the DH&S needs, especially because at the same time all this is happening with Nolan, they're dealing with a concurrent crisis, the Reaper emergency.
Okay, wait. A Reaper emergency.
Yeah.
That sounds significantly more serious than a beanbag chair incident.
It is. This background crisis adds a whole other layer of urgency to Nolan's, otherwise standard-sounding task.
What's the deal with Reapers in this setup? They're not just like guys in cloaks with scythes.
Well, they might have cloaks, but they're described as notoriously solitary, ruthless, and highly unpredictable, powerful entities. And the fact that they also apparently dominate the departmental botch-ball tournament.
Botch-ball? Seriously?
It's just another layer of that weird mandatory team-building stuff they seem to do in the afterlife. Gotta keep morale up, I guess.
Even for the Reapers.
Apparently. But a missing Reaper, that's not just a minor personnel issue. It's a high-stakes crisis. It could genuinely threaten the fabric of the mortal world.
How serious are we talking?
The involvement of Gideon confirms it's major. He's one of the oldest, most feared Reapers. Rumor has it, he might even be death itself.
Okay, wow. So, big picture. The DH&S is juggling poltergeist mishaps, mandatory picnics, benefits admin, and a potentially world-ending crisis with a missing Reaper.
Precisely. But Isabella, Nolan's boss, her focus remains absolutely laser-sharp on the calendar. Nolan's priority is his assignment, governed by the strictest rules imaginable.
Which brings us to the mission itself, the rules of reclamation.
And they are inflexible. Nolan, as the ghost of Christmas past, gets his assignment, the official missive, as they call it, directly from Isabella. Yeah. Always on the final day of November.
And the goal is always the same.
Pretty much. Change the ways of the assigned recalcitrant subject, make them less miserable, basically.
But the clock starts ticking immediately. Huge pressure on Nolan.
Immense pressure. The most critical rule is the hard deadline. Nolan must successfully hand off the subject to the next ghost, the ghost of Christmas present, before Christmas Eve hits.
And if he fails?
If he misses that deadline, the mortal subject is, and this is the official term, doomed to a life of misery and sadness, permanently.
Wow. High stakes for the mortal.
Definitely. The system seems designed for speed and efficiency, maybe to stop lingering human unhappiness from, gumming up the works elsewhere.
Makes sense in a bureaucratic way. But as we'll see, the stakes for Nolan himself might actually be even higher.
Absolutely. Which makes his whole approach even more interesting.
Let's transition then, from the organization, the DH&S, to the agent himself. The one stuck executing this high-pressure, super complex assignment. Nolan.
Right. And Nolan, from the get-go, is actively pushing back against the stereotypes of his job, which tells you a lot about him and about how desperate he is to just get out of this role.
He doesn't do the whole dramatic entrance thing.
No flash and bang routine, as the files call it. He refuses the standard long white cloak. He actively avoids the theatrics.
So he's trying to blend in to be forgettable.
Seems like it. The sources describe him looking just like an ordinary guy. Dark jeans, brown boots, flannel shirt. He's got a strong jaw, broad shoulders, a rough voice, and this faint accent that's hard to place. He basically looks like a local fisherman.
Which is what he was, right? Before.
Exactly who he was. And this resignation, this sort of quiet endurance, it's central to his personal agony, I think. After a whole century doing the same grim task, he exists in what he calls a half-life.
A half-life. That sounds bleak. Explain that. What does it actually mean for him?
It's like this profound sensory deprivation, but masked by capability. He can do physical things. He can eat food. He drinks coffee. He even sleeps. But the experience is fundamentally muted, empty. He doesn't actually taste the food. He doesn't dream when he sleeps. Sensation only comes through as these vague imprints, like tracing a picture on cold glass. You see the outline for a second, but then it fades before you can really feel it.
Wow. That explains. There was a note about his favorite food being hot tamales.
Exactly. If you can't really taste, what do you crave? Impact. Sensation.
Right. The intense cinnamon heat.
It's not about flavor, it's a sensory jolt. An attempt to just feel something, anything, to cut through the dullness of his existence. He's chasing the memory of sensation, maybe not the sensation itself.
This dull, waiting existence?
Yeah.
No wonder he's exhausted.
Utterly exhausted. He's functioning, sure, but completely without joy, without fulfillment, which is why he's so intensely focused on just completing this one last mission and finally moving on.
And the way he interacts with the world, or rather, doesn't interact, that reinforces this detachment, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. We learned that mortals can see him physically, but they immediately forget him. They just move around him, like a river flowing around a rock is how it's described.
Invisible in plain sight.
Precisely. It's actually kind of genius from the system's perspective. A ghost who's visible but totally unmemorable.
Ensures he can do his work without disrupting the timeline. No witnesses.
Right. But for Nolan, it means 100 years of being completely, utterly ignored, surrounded by people, but totally alone.
So this assignment, Harriet York, it's supposed to be his last one, his ticket out.
That's the plan. He was a fisherman, died way back in 1902, in a storm at sea. After a century haunting, as he puts it, terrible humans, and reliving their worst moments, he desperately wants peace to move on.
But he doesn't really remember his own life.
Almost nothing concrete. He only gets these flashes, bits of sound, color, pale pink, sea glass green, the roar of waves, a lighthouse beam, a church bell ringing, fragments.
So the assignment is everything. Finish the job, get the sign-off from Isabella, and the DH&S grants him passage. Rest. Finally.
That's the deal. Fulfill the duty, get the reward. Clean and simple, bureaucratic.
So, enter Harriet York, Nolan's assignment. She's supposed to be this recalcitrant subject, right? The person whose life is so off track it flagged the DH&S's attention.
Yeah, but here's the first crack in the system. Harriet is immediately different. She's not the standard Scrooge type Nolan is used to dealing with. Not at all.
How so? Where do we first meet her?
We're introduced to her through the world she's built, her antique shop in Annapolis, the Crow's Nest.
Okay.
It's described really warmly. Cedar shingles, green trim. She inherited it from her Aunt Matilda, who she loved dearly. It was actually her childhood home, surrounded by all these forgotten things, as she calls them.
So she's comfortable with the past, with old things,
Yep.
not someone running from it.
Exactly. And her whole philosophy on life runs completely counter to the kind of misery the DH&S seems to expect, or maybe even prefers.
What's her approach?
She actively avoids focusing on the bad stuff. She loves, apparently obnoxiously oversized Christmas decorations, and her problem-solving technique. It involves, quote, a shift in perspective.
The shift in perspective.
And usually a large blueberry Danish.
Okay, I like her already. Blueberry Danish sounds like a solid strategy.
Right. She sees beauty in things that are imperfect, which, might be an immediate red flag for a bureaucracy that seems obsessed with perfect conformity and order.
Her daily routine sounds pretty normal, though, managing the shop.
Yeah, dealing with customers. But even there, it's like managing small, persistent chaos with a surprising amount of grace and probably pastries.
Like what kind of chaos?
Well, the files mention her wrestling with a customer who wanted to buy an antique nightstand, but only if it came unassembled, like it was a Kia.
Unassembled, an antique.
Yep. Or the woman demanding a full refund for a vintage music box because it had this tiny, almost invisible crack. Harriet deals with it.
So she's resilient. But the sources mention the real pressure cooker for her is family stuff.
That seems to be the core issue, yes. She gets this invitation to her mother's annual holiday gala. It's on fancy gold foil cardstock.
Okay.
But it's the exact same impersonal invitation that her father's accountant receives. That one little detail just screams transactional relationship, doesn't it? Cold. Formal.
Yeah, that's rough. And there's something with her sister, too.
That's the deepest source of her sadness, it seems. The thing that likely got her flagged as recalcitrant by the DH&S system. She's estranged from her sister, Samantha.
Why? What happened?
The conflict apparently started when Harriet decided to take over the Crow's Nest, the antique shop, instead of pursuing the career path her family expected.
Ah, the classic family expectation clash.
Exactly. And Harriet's terrified of repeating history. She watched her mother and her Aunt Matilda just tear into each other for years until their relationship was basically, quote, a pile of ash. She's desperately trying not to become like
So
them.
she's actively trying to avoid misery, not wallowing in it.
Right. Which makes her recalcitrant status even weirder. So when Nolan finally appears to her, her reaction isn't fear. It's not acceptance either.
What is it?
It's basically administrative annoyance. She protests, she argues she's a good person, I pay my taxes, I feed my neighbor's cat, that kind of thing.
Huh? She's trying to appeal the haunting.
Pretty much. She initially thinks Nolan must be a stalker, or maybe she's having some kind of medical event, or he's recruiting for a cult.
Anything but except she's being officially haunted.
Her immediate reaction is to try and troubleshoot the situation, like it's a customer service problem. She views the haunting as a bureaucratic error that she needs to report to management.
Which is ironic, given the DH&S is the management.
Totally. But the actual sort of cynical reason she got flagged in the first place, that's where the DH&S's cold, impartial judgment really becomes clear.
Okay, what was the official mistake?
Nolan takes her on a trip to the past, standard procedure, and the core problem is revealed. Harriet's big mistake, the reason for the haunting. It was her decision to quit her high-flying law firm job.
The one her mother wanted for her.
The very one. A prestigious role her mother had actually pulled strings to secure for her. Harriet quitting that to take over the dusty old antique shop. Her mother didn't just see it as a disappointment, she called it a betrayal.
A betrayal. Wow. That's harsh.
And that was the moment. There was the failure Nolan was sent to correct. Her failure to live up to her family's cold, impersonal expectations of status and, conventional success.
So let me get this straight. Nolan wasn't sent because Harriet robbed a bank or kicked puppies or anything actually bad.
Nope.
He was sent because she chose a path that made her happy but disappointed her status-obsessed family.
Essentially, yes. The DH&S system focused entirely on structure, order, predictability. It basically criminalizes nonconformity. It seems to prioritize cold societal expectations over genuine individual human happiness.
That suggests the whole DH&S system. It's fundamentally aligned with maintaining the status quo, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even if that status quo is kind of miserable for the people involved.
It certainly seems that way. Harriet finding happiness outside the bounds of what her mother dictated. That was seen as a disruptive anomaly, something that needed fixing, needed bringing back into line.
Which brings us right to the point where the whole operation starts to just fall apart. The mission drift, the magical instability. It all kicks off the moment Nolan encounters Harriet's sheer refusal to just accept her fate.
Protocol failure happens almost immediately. Day one, Harriet flat out refuses to cooperate. She spends most of their first meeting demanding to speak to his supervisor.
Treating him like a faulty appliance salesman.
Exactly. She sees the whole haunting process as like a gross violation of her consumer rights or something. This forces Nolan, Mr. Routine himself, to actually come back the next day. Throws his whole centuries-old methodical schedule completely off balance right away.
And it's Harriet's personality, isn't it? Her warmth, her curiosity, that forces the shift away from protocol.
Absolutely. Nolan is this creature of habit, of detachment, and she just bulldozes through it with these small, unexpected acts of kindness. He starts showing genuine, completely unauthorized care for her.
Like what? What does he do?
Well, he brings her coffee, which is already a breach, right? Agents aren't supposed to cater to the subject's physical needs.
Right.
And it's not even her preferred peppermint mocha. He brings her a dark roast because, as he thinks, she'll need the strength to argue with him all day. It's considerate, but totally against the rules.
Okay, that's minor maybe, but it gets deeper.
Much deeper. There's this one memory trip. They're observing a past version of Harriet chopping down a Christmas tree in the freezing cold. Standard observation.
Yeah.
But Nolan notices the current Harriet, the one standing beside him, is shivering from the memory's chill. And despite his usual ghostly aloofness, his detachment, he offers her his own hand-knitted mittens.
Wow. Hand-knitted mittens, a ghost knitting.
Apparently. But think about that gesture. He risks his own spectral, non-feeling state, or rather acts against his nature to provide physical comfort to the mortal subject, because he knows she'll feel that lingering chill when they snap back to the present.
He's prioritizing her immediate comfort over the entire mission's objectivity, over a century of ingrained protocol.
Completely. And Nolan himself starts to crack under the pressure of, well, feeling things again. He loses his ghostly composure when Harriet casually suggests his haunting duties are just a party trick.
Ouch.
Yeah. He lashes out, revealing just how deep his resentment runs. His desperate desire to move on, his bitterness about this long, muted existence, it all comes pouring out.
And how does Harriet react to his vulnerability?
This is where the dynamic totally flips. Instead of being scared or put off, she offers him comfort after that outburst, after a particularly traumatic memory trip they take. She even gives him a gift.
A gift. For her ghost stalker.
A little box of cinnamon candies, like the hot tamales he craves. And then she starts proactively trying to figure out his problem, how to solve his unfinished business so he can move on.
So she's become the agent, trying to fix him.
Exactly. She's the one trying to resolve the case now. The entire structure of the mission has completely inverted. He's supposed to be fixing her life, but she's focused on fixing his.
And this growing connection, this totally forbidden affection, it starts having real physical consequences, doesn't it, in the magical realm?
Oh, yeah. Big time. The emotional intensity between them causes Nolan's magic, which would be tightly controlled, to just flare uncontrollably. It's like an electrical surge overloading the DHNS's bureaucratic infrastructure.
Yeah.
His feelings are literally breaking the system.
What kind of anomalies are we talking about?
The sources list several examples of this magical unraveling. There's unintentional teleportation just hopping across her shop counter, but it feels violent, like being tossed into a storm. It shows the physical strain this connection is putting on his spectral form.
Okay, unstable movement. What else?
The really visual stuff is directly linked to moments of high emotion between them, like the spontaneous explosion of mistletoe.
And mistletoe.
Yeah, masses of it appearing out of nowhere and spreading across the entire shop ceiling like some kind of magical, fast-growing ivy. And it was triggered, apparently, the exact moment they shared a kiss.
So love, or at least intense affection, is basically treated like an electrical short circuit by the afterlife systems. It just fries everything.
That's exactly what it looks like. And maybe the most dramatic example. During a moment of intense passion in her bedroom, Nolan's instability creates this full-blown snow globe effect.
A snow globe effect.
Swirling golden sparks and actual snowflakes materialized out of thin air, filling the room. It's a complete, uncontrolled, magical outburst, something that should be totally impossible for an agent whose power is meant to be strictly governed by protocol and mission parameters.
He's losing control completely.
Utterly. And this chaotic instability, it reaches its absolute peak during something the files call the contagious past.
Contagious past. What does that mean?
It means instead of the magic pulling them back into Harriet's past, like it's supposed to, their combined emotional energy, their connection is so strong, it yanks them into Nolan's forgotten history instead.
Whoa. Where they end up?
They are violently transported right onto his fishing boat during the fatal storm, 1902.
Oh, wow. That must have been incredibly traumatic for him.
Extremely. He's witnessing himself struggling, fighting the storm that killed him. He hears the terrifying roar of the ocean again, catches a fleeting glimpse of his father laughing from an earlier memory, just these painful fragments of the life he lost and barely remembers.
And Harriet. What does she do in this memory?
This is where Harriet's character really shines, I think. Nolan internally calls it her wild attention. She doesn't shrink back. She sees the past version of Nolan struggling in the water, and she nearly drowns herself trying to reach him, trying to help the memory Nolan. Even though it's just a memory, it can't actually harm him. It shows she's willing to risk everything for him, even in a phantom past.
Her instinct is just to help, regardless of logic.
Completely. And Nolan, seeing her in danger, the real present Harriet nearly drowning in this memory storm, he performs the most impossible, most profound protocol breach of all.
What does he do?
He uses his magic, yes, but also his breath. He performs what amounts to mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on her to pull them both back to safety, back to the present.
But he's a ghost. He doesn't breathe.
Exactly. He doesn't have breath, yet he performs this intimate, life-saving act. It's the ultimate confirmation. His dedication to her, the mortal subject, has completely overridden every single rule the DHNS ever created, his own spectral nature, even.
He has officially spectacularly failed the mission.
Oh, absolutely. Broken every rule in the book, nearly got the subject killed, ironically, by saving her life.
And fallen deeply, irreversibly in love in the process.
Which brings us to the resolution, which is where the profound, almost beautiful irony underpinning the entire rigid DHNS structure is finally revealed.
Okay, so how does this resolve? He's failed, but he's connected to her. What happens next?
Well, first, there's still that pesky bureaucratic requirement. He needs to find his unfinished business, the technical reason he's been stuck haunting for a century.
Right. The thing he was supposed to be looking for all along.
And Nolan finally admits it. He says he was too distracted by Harriet, a distraction he now clearly cherishes, to even properly investigate the actual cause of his lingering status. He got sidetracked by feelings.
Understandable, I guess. So what was it? What was his unfinished business?
It turns out to be a physical object, a non-working compass, old, brass with a broken chain, and critically, it only points in one direction, constantly.
A compass that doesn't work right. And it was his.
Nolan is stunned when he sees it. It was his compass. From his human life as a fisherman, it should have gone down with his boat, should be at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, lost forever.
But it wasn't. Where did they find it?
Harriet finds it, in the most mundane place imaginable. The storage closet of the crow's nest, buried under an old jam crate. Just another forgotten thing in her shop.
Wow. Hiding in plain sight all along.
Exactly. A cosmic key hidden under old junk. She cleans it up and gives it to him. As a Christmas gift, actually.
A poignant gift. So, finding the compass that fulfills the technical requirement, that's enough for him to move on.
Technically, yes. According to the ancient rules, finding the object associated with his death, his unfinished business, that clears his file. The Ghost of Christmas Past mission is, on paper, complete. He can move on now. But that's just the surface layer.
There's more to it.
Oh, much more. The real key discovery, the one that completely redefines the entire case, comes straight from the source.
Yeah.
The DH&S waiting room itself.
Who reveals it? Isabella.
Not Isabella directly, though she's involved. Harriet's Aunt Matilda makes an appearance. Remember her, the beloved aunt who owned the shop? She's a spirit now, apparently waiting for her own processing.
And Matilda. Okay, what does she say?
Matilda, with confirmation from Isabella, who materializes beside her looking smug, confirms the whole haunting. It's basically a setup.
A setup by the DH&S.
Yes. Isabella clarifies something crucial. The DH&S, she insists, does not make mistakes. However, they do sometimes create intentional anomalies, strategic deviations from protocol.
Anomalies? To what end?
To correct deeper, systemic, organizational issues that normal procedures can't fix.
Okay, now this is fascinating. Bureaucracy using chaos theory.
Kind of. This is where we learn the truly paradoxical nature of this whole afterlife administration. Nolan, our ghost, he was essentially a broken file, a glitch in their system. His centuries-long lingering status, his inability to find peace. That was a flaw the organization couldn't resolve through standard protocol. They tried, presumably, and failed.
So he was like a corrupted file on their server they couldn't delete.
Exactly, and they couldn't fix him internally, so they had to introduce an external variable, an anomaly. They had to introduce Harriet.
Harriet was the variable, intentionally assigned to him.
Intentionally. Matilda reveals that while, yes, the compass technically satisfied the rules for Nolan finding peace, his true unfinished business, the real reason he was stuck, it wasn't an object, it was Harriet herself.
Wait, she was his unfinished business.
How?
Nolan's century of misery, his stuck status, that was the original anomaly. And that anomaly, that glitch, paradoxically allowed the system, specifically Isabella, to match him with the technically wrong assignment. Harriet wasn't truly recalcitrant in the way they usually define it, so they bent their own rules to assign her to him. Precisely, because Harriet, the woman whose only flaw was choosing her own happiness, was, as Matilda puts it, secretly meant to be yours. His soulmate, essentially across time and life and death. So the system knew it couldn't fix Nolan's problem with rules and regulations.
Exactly. They had to introduce the one thing their system couldn't account for or control. Genuine love, human connection, attachment. It was a workaround. The only way to fix their most broken agent was through a human whose biggest sin was rejecting cold expectations.
Wow, that's kind of beautiful in a really twisted bureaucratic way.
Isn't it? Matilda sums it up perfectly. Her final line just synthesizes the whole thing. You were sent to haunt Harriet, but she ended up haunting you.
She haunted him back into feeling again.
Right. The greatest, most rigid bureaucracy in the cosmos had to rely on the completely uncontrollable, chaotic energy of love, basically to solve an internal human resources problem.
It suggests their own protocols are just too brittle, too rigid for the most complex human emotions. And sometimes the only way for the system to actually function is, well, to cheat its own rules.
It certainly looks that way. So the technical requirement is met. The assignment, such as it was, is complete. Nolan has the compass. He's free.
Which means he finally gets the choice he's wanted for a century.
The ultimate choice. Isabella presents him with two doors. Door number 1, the long-awaited rest. peace, oblivion maybe, everything he thought he craved.
And door number 2.
Door number 2, return to Harriet, go back to the mortal world, but as something else. A difficult, uncertain future, but with her.
That's a heavy choice, after 100 years wanting peace.
You'd think it would be simple, but the connection with Harriet changed everything. When Isabella asks him, point blank, how long he would wait for Harriet if he chose peace now and she lived out her mortal life, his answer tells you everything.
What does he say?
He just says, as many as it took, however long. There's no hesitation. He chooses the door back to the mortal world, back to her.
He chooses connection over oblivion.
Instantly, and he returns. But not as the ghost we knew, not the spectral, flannel-wearing guy existing in that half-life.
How does he return?
He's transformed. The sources describe him looking tender and warm. He's finally found his rest, but not in oblivion. He found it with Harriet. Implies he's human now, or something very close to it.
And he confirms it was his choice.
Explicitly, he tells Harriet, I got myself a ticket to the one place that I was always supposed to be. He chose her, chose life, chose love.
Okay, that's the emotional resolution.
Yeah.
But you mentioned something earlier about a fundamental rule being broken permanently.
Yes. The most important footnote to this whole case, maybe. The memory paradox. This could have huge implications for DH&S operations.
What's the paradox?
Remember how Nolan always stated very clearly that mortals forget ghosts? They see them, but the memory just slides away, like water around a rock. Standard operating procedure, keeps things clean.
Right. Visible, but not memorable.
But Harriet, she remembers everything, every single detail of her time with Nolan as a ghost. She even keeps the scarf he knitted for her while he was spectral. The memories stick.
So the rule broke for her because of the intensity of their connection.
That seems to be part of it, but it gets even stranger. The rule breaking isn't just confined to Harriet, the direct subject of the anomaly.
No one else remembers.
Her friend and coworker at the shop, Sasha? Sasha explicitly remembers Nolan being there. She refers to him later as the hot guy who was in here with that hot girl.
Sasha remembers him, even though she wasn't haunted, wasn't part of the mission.
Exactly. It suggests that Nolan's return, his transformation, his choice. It was so significant, so potent, it didn't just affect Harriet, it permanently altered the memory wiping field, or whatever mechanism the DH&S uses, for everyone around Harriet who witnessed him.
So the chaos caused by their love didn't just bend the rules. It fundamentally rewrote a core law of the afterlife for this specific instance.
That's what it looks like. The organization, the DH&S, engineered a tiny anomaly, assigning Harriet to Nolan, hoping to fix a technical problem, their broken agent. But that tiny anomaly triggered a cascade failure. It resulted in the permanent alteration of what seemed like a universal law. Love broke the code.
Which is just mind-blowing when you think about the scale of this bureaucracy.
Absolutely. And that brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought, something for you, the listener, to chew on.
Okay, let's hear it.
It circles back to that compass, Nolan's compass. The physical object that symbolized his duty, his unfinished business, his century of being stuck.
The one that only pointed in one direction.
Exactly. Despite 100 years of aimless wandering, of haunting terrible people, of desperately aiming for oblivion, that compass, his internal compass maybe, was always pointed in one direction. It was always pointed toward Harriet, even before he met her.
So his destiny, his true north, was her all along.
It seems so.
Right.
Which makes you wonder, what does it truly mean when the universe's oldest, most bureaucratic, most rule-obsessed structures are apparently willing to bend or maybe even intentionally break their own most fundamental, supposedly unchanging rules, all for a single perfect instance of human warmth, human connection?
It raises the question, maybe the biggest anomalies aren't the things that break the rules.
Right. Maybe the real anomalies are the things that reveal the true, completely unexpected purpose behind the rules in the first place. A purpose the bureaucracy itself might not even understand.
The DH&S might run on paperwork and quarterly reports, but the universe apparently sometimes runs on love, and maybe a really good blueberry Danish.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into post-mortal bureaucracy, organizational chaos, and the undeniable power of, yes, a really cute antique fob owner.
Always a pleasure exploring these files. Until next time on The Deep Dive.